Las armas van a dejar que la guerrilla de la FARC, las armas van a dejar.
A song for peace to seal a deal between the Colombian government and FARC rebels. This was Colombia's moment to end a 52-year war with the Marxist guerrilla group. But Colombians still had the final say. The government urged them to vote yes to end the war and begin reconciliation. But the opposition shouted no, wanting peace but with retribution. All the polls predicted the deal would pass easily. But it didn't. 50.2% of voters rejected the agreement. Colombia's big cities, except the capital Bogotá, voted against the deal, whereas rural parts, hardest hit by the violence, overwhelmingly voted yes. But in the hills of Tolima, where the FARC's guerrilla movement was born, voters rejected the peace deal. We traveled to the remote town of Villarrica to find out why. Like much of Colombia's countryside, Villarrica came under frequent attack at the height of the war. The scars from years of fighting with the FARC are still here to see. And for Natividad, memories of a midnight ambush 10 years ago are vivid as ever.
Nosotros ya estábamos durmiendo cuando sentimos el alabaleo. A nosotros nos cogió la toma acá en la pieza, en la primera, y nos tocó correr aquí para allá para la última. Y esto fue terrible. Aquí para abajo todo esto lleno de gente.
These days, business is slow. It's why Elias kept quiet about his opposition to the peace deal. Speaking out against the government, he told us, could lose him customers.
Es doloroso para un pueblo como Villarrica decir que ya el señor presidente ya hizo la paz con ellos y que él esté tan seguro cuando en Villarrica lo hemos vivido a ojos, a mano y a sangre propia.
One man who has lived it is Álvaro Uribe, the former president of Colombia whose father was killed by the FARC. In the 1990s, he led a ruthless military campaign against the group, decimating their ranks from 20,000 to 7,000 fighters, with the help of his former defense minister, now president, Juan Manuel Santos. Uribe has since become the biggest opponent of this peace deal, demanding harsher punishment for top FARC commanders.
Pregunto a la comunidad internacional si un país democrático habría dado elegibilidad e impunidad al delincuente que, como en el caso de FARC, a este secuestrado que aparece en esta foto, le pusieron un collar bomba en el cuello.
It's a powerful message that chimes with many Colombians, even in the capital Bogotá, where the population voted yes. But for Andrés, voting against the peace deal wasn't about politics. He's a music teacher who simply took the time to read it.
I read the document. It was extremely long, 297 pages, I believe, if I'm not wrong. And it was extremely difficult for the ordinary people to understand, even educated people. When I understood what was this about, I said, we are not welfare states. People struggle just to have a half-decent life, and suddenly, out of the blue, they come up with pensions and seats in the Congress and a lot of money that we, as tax contributors, have to pay to war criminals. This is beyond belief.
The peace experts say that a pursuit of justice must come with reconciliation. But in Colombia, decades of war have fueled animosity and distrust. Milena knows the struggle. She moved to Bogotá after leaving the FARC 8 years ago.
Ingresé a las FARC a la edad de los 13 años. Después de un tiempo, yo decía, yo no puedo seguir más dentro de esta guerra. No vamos para ningún lado. Yo tengo una familia que hace 8 años no veo, no sé si viven. Una vida donde no conocías nada más que un fusil y el monte. Entonces, y tener que salir a la sociedad, pues para mí nunca fue fácil. Pero también hay mucha gente que dice, no, yo qué voy a compartir mi vida o mi entorno con una persona como usted, sabiendo todo lo que usted ha hecho.
At this specially organized volleyball match against Rwanda, former FARC fighters and soldiers are playing for the same team. It's a scene the government is keen to promote, but easier for some than others. Diego is a retired soldier who lost his leg in a landmine accident caused by the FARC.
Considero que va a ser difícil, porque no todos están dispuestos a aceptarlo. O sea, el yo sentarme a jugar con ellos es como yo darme cuenta yo mismo que el odio que una vez sentí, que fue mucho, cambiarlo al perdón. Saber que sí podemos trabajar juntos. Siempre y cuando ambas partes estemos dispuestos a hacerlo y que el bien sea común.
¿Usted tiene fe? Whether people voted yes or no, everyone says they want peace. But Colombians find themselves at odds over so much.
There's been quite a lot of debate on the streets of Bogota following this plebiscite. What's clear is that the country is divided, not only in terms of how they see the agreement, whether they think it's fair, but there are far greater political divides in the country as well.
Falsa hipócrita porque fueron 3 hermanas que me mataron. No me empujes.
Porque invertimos plata en el conflicto, porque no vamos a invertir en el posconflicto, o sea, no tiene sentido. O sea, y ahora sí les duele la plata, y ahora sí les duelen los impuestos.
La gente estaba engañada con el chavismo. ¿Qué hizo el chavismo? Chávez se llenó de plata, se enriqueció y dejó a la gente muerta de hambre. Y eso nunca sirve.
Behind the parliament gates, senators also debated late into the night. They were supposed to pass new tax laws to fund the peace deal. Instead, politicians are trying to work out what to do with the rejected agreement.
It's still the epicenter of our politics. It's what to do or what not to do with the FARC, which is simply absurd because they don't represent no more than 2 or 3% of the Colombian people. Everybody hates them, everybody rejects them, everybody rejects violence. We could get rid of them through this agreement, and we chose not to.
It's now up to the opposition, namely Álvaro Uribe, to bring new demands to talks with the FARC in Havana. It's a race against time as guerrillas wait in limbo, neither at war nor at peace. And Colombians wait for their historic moment to truly arrive. Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers.
Well, Sandra Gatman has returned from Colombia, and she joins me now here in the studio. Sandra, I just want to return to the top of your report because there's such impressive images from those ceremonies that seem to celebrate the deal being done. Now, that was before it went to the referendum. So I have to ask, were some of those no votes strictly out of resentment for those kinds of images, that kind of promotion of the deal before it went to the people?
Some people I spoke to in Colombia did think it was a premature celebration and an intentional one on behalf of the president, Juan Manuel Santos, who really wanted this deal to succeed, as did 49% or so of Colombians. So I think for some people in the no camp, it was basically forcing the yes decision before the plebiscite was even held. And some people even took issue with the fact that the speech given by the FARC's leader, Timoshenko, didn't ask for an apology from the Colombian people. He didn't ask for their forgiveness. He offered an apology. That translates well. And they took issue with that. And it turns out that that very speech swayed a great deal of voters as well to vote no.
So if that premature celebration was some kind of PR strategy, it backfired pretty miserably on Santos and the Yes campaign. Well, let's move it forward then. You say, at the end of your report that the ball really is now in the opposition's camp. What do they particularly Alvaro Uribe, who really leads that opposition movement. What do they need to do now to move the peace process forward?
So what they need to do now is to present their demands to the Colombian government, and they're meant to send those demands over to the renegotiation process in Havana. Now they have until Thursday to do that. Before, Alvaro Uribe categorically denied that his party, who led the No campaign, the Centro Democrático, would itself be involved in these new talks. But recently he agreed that perhaps some of his spokespeople could be present during those talks. The big question is, and the Colombian president has made this clear, whether their demands are going to be impossible demands. He says at this stage, we cannot put new, fresh, overhauling demands on the table. The FARC have also said that, we're open to flexibility, we're open to discussing those demands, but that a whole renegotiation cannot take place, and they're not open to do that. What Alvaro Uribe wants is for top FARC commanders to spend between 5 to 8 years in detention, not necessarily behind bars, but in areas of the countryside where they'll have their freedom taken away from them for the crimes that they committed. And the transitional justice can go ahead as planned. They're going to be put on trial, all sides of the conflict, in order for people to correct history, tell the truth, own up to their crimes, and many of the fighters will escape jail time. But that demand to have FARC commanders spend between 5 to 8 years in detention is something they're really pushing for, but the big question is whether they'll bow to those demands.
Because do people see that as revenge, or is it reconciliation?
For many no voters, they see that as justice. And they see that, the peace agreement that was put to them was far too lenient. They didn't see a whole lot of willingness in their eyes from the FARC to offer, how many assets they have. Some estimates put their finances at around $10 billion, but the guerrilla group often have said that they're bankrupt. So a lot of these no voters haven't seen a lot from the FARC. They haven't felt they were as forthcoming as they needed to be, weren't as apologetic as they needed to be, and therefore they felt that the peace deal needed to have something more.
Okay. Now, the process entered the news cycle again because of negotiations with the ELN, which is the second largest guerrilla group in Colombia. I want to ask how much those negotiations actually mean to Colombians as compared to the FARC deal.
When you spoke to a lot of Colombians in the run-up to this plebiscite, they often said, the skeptics often said, well, we can settle this war with the FARC, but we still have the ELN out there. So it takes away that argument that, one peace process can help fuel momentum for another peace process. And it has turned out to be the case because the ELN have now started to give up hostages. The FARC have also offered their support to the ELN, who share an ideology, a Marxist ideology, in their quest for a peace deal as well. So I think both of those peace negotiations are going hand in hand, but the ELN are far behind.
Okay, Sandra, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming in.